Welcome back to Focus Today, and what a delight to have back with us today Dr. Herb London. He's the president of the London Center for Policy Research. He's the co-author of a book. It's a fascinating read called The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. There's a picture up there on the screen. You may want to check that out at the bookstores. And his website is londoncenter.org. And what an honor to have him. He could be anywhere, but he's let us have a few moments of his time. Dr. London, good to see you, my friend.
Oh, pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for your kind introduction.
Well, listen, what do you think so far of the cabinet picks by President-elect Trump?
I think President Trump has done very well indeed. I mean, it remains to be seen what's going to happen in state. But I think that if Mattis ends up at defense, if Flynn is going to be the national security advisor, and that appointment has already been made, I think there's some excellent choices. And Jeff Sessions, an outstanding appointment in my judgment for Attorney General. I do have a great confidence in the picks that have been made thus far. I think it demonstrates something about Donald Trump and the kind of generosity of spirit that was not evident during the course of the campaign.
The session, was that a surprise to you? Because everybody thought Giuliani was going to get that.
No, it was not a surprise to me. I think Jeff Sessions is the right person. Giuliani will be in running for state. And Giuliani, of course, is someone who has served as a key advisor and someone who's a close associate of Donald Trump's right from the beginning.
He's getting a lot of pushback over the weekend on the thought of a Mitt Romney for Secretary of State. Do you think, what do you think of that?
Well, look, I'm not privy to the inside debate, but I can imagine there are many people inside the Trump camp who are saying, here is a person who made comments about Donald Trump, suggesting that he was not in a position to be a president of the United States, that he was maladroit, awkward, boorish, all the rest. And now you're going to appoint him as Secretary of State seems very odd. Is this a loyalist? Is this someone you can count on? So I think that it's a little complicated for Trump to come to the realization that this is the right person to be Secretary of State. However, if he were selected, it would also demonstrate that Donald Trump can put the past behind him and move ahead with someone who is clearly competent to handle that job.
In addition to that, Romney almost threw the election to Hillary by what he did with a hand-picked person in Salt Lake.
I think that's correct. I think it also suggests, again, that Donald Trump was vehemently opposed to Donald Trump. And so what do you do under these circumstances? As I said, he may be competent for the job, but if you're one of the people who is associated with the Trump campaign, you'd obviously have reservations about Romney.
So that leaves in the running, supposedly, Giuliani, Bolton, and Petraeus. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that John Bolton would be an outstanding selection. He's smart. He has served very effectively in the United Nations. He has spoken out about foreign policy issues. He is both knowledgeable and articulate. He knows how to make the arguments. He's also engaged in negotiations in what is unquestionably a morass of hostile opinion, and that is the United Nations. So I think that that would be a superb choice. Petraeus, of course, a very, very bright military theorist who was head of Central Command, and aside from one mistake that he made in providing classified material to his mistress, I think would also be a very good choice. So I don't have any problem with the other selections. I do think that Bolton is truly an outstanding individual who should play a role in this administration.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was a little concerned about Petraeus. Don't get me wrong, I think he has the credentials, but you would have to recertify him with classified information. And what would that say about Hillary's issues if he was approved?
I think that's one of the reasons why it's unlikely that Petraeus gets the job. He, in many respects, is, I think, very competent. Made an error, a serious error, and an error that would obviously put him in the position of appearing to be like Hillary Clinton, violating the protocols associated with classified material.
All right, so we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, it's kind of the plum job, so you to just give it to somebody like Obama did to Hillary Clinton. We saw the results of that. Now that the Middle East is so complicated, you would think that it's a no-brainer that it should go to John Bolton.
Well, I think it has to go to someone who understands the pathologies and the intricacies that exist in the Middle East. I mean, the first and overarching responsibility of this administration will be to restore confidence with the Sunni nations that the United States can be trusted. I mean, Egypt, for example, wants to work with the United States, but they have grown very suspicious about the Obama administration. Saudi Arabia wants to work with the United States, but they too have grown very, very suspicious. of the United States. So restoring the confidence that you can count on the United States, that the nuclear umbrella is intact, that this government stands behind you, I think is very, very important. So you need a Secretary of State that the very first day that the bell rings, he's out there on the road doing whatever he can to restore relationships with the nations that once believed in the leadership of the United States.
One of the deals that can make this kind of complicated, actually two deals now, is the Iran deal. And what do we do with Cuba now with the death of Castro? I mean, that Secretary of State person's got to have that under their belt day one.
Well, in the case of Cuba, I would go back to Cuba and say, as long as there is oppression in this country, as long as you are saying to dissidents, you're going to end up in prison, as long as they end up in some dirty cell with torture, as was the case with Valadares, it seems to me that we've got to undo. And the same is true with other nations in the world that engage in oppression. The United States should say, this is intolerable. We're not going to recognize you under these circumstances. So I do think that there's a very, very important role that the Secretary of State will play. Now, in the case of Iran, what you say is the Iran deal, which was written in the subjective tense, by the way, and never approved by Iran. So these are things that might happen or could happen. If you read the 159-page document, you kind of scratch your head saying, yeah, but is there anything that must happen? Well, the answer is no. And so the Iranians will continue to develop their refined material. So they'll have enough fissile material in a year, 5 years, 10 years to acquire nuclear weapons. There's no question that they will acquire nuclear weapons. The only question is when. So I think that we've got to undo that agreement and say under no circumstances is Iran going to possess nuclear weapons. Should they do so, that would be a destabilizing influence in the Middle East, and then you will see nuclear proliferation in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and elsewhere.
Fascinating, fascinating. So, all right, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Some suggest that Giuliani should just go ahead and become Secretary of Homeland Security. I mean, that's more in keeping with what he's doing now throughout the world. And would you like to see him there?
Well, look, I think Rudy Giuliani is a very competent guy. He was the best mayor in the recent history of New York. There is no doubt that he is someone who knows how to put things in place. He ran a very large organization. I think he'd be competent in either of those positions. Homeland Security may be a more valid, appropriate position for him, but again, it's very hard to say. It's also a question of what Giuliani wants. He was a loyalist, so to some degree, it's not only a question of what Donald Trump wants to put him in, it's also a question of what Giuliani seeks, and that may be different.
Early on in the election cycle, Dr. London, Donald Trump put out a list of 11 or 12 potential Supreme Court nominees, and he has been building on that list. Is he bound by that list, or could he reach out and put a Giuliani there or a Ted Cruz there or somebody like that?
I think the possibility exists that there could be someone outside that list. However, keep in mind that he made it clear during the course of the campaign when he reached out to the Federalist Society and the Heritage Group that he was going to select from their list of candidates. The list, I think, is outstanding. You look at people like Pryor and Seitz. I mean, there are some outstanding candidates there who fit into the Scalia camp philosophically. I think that these are excellent selections. If he was to take any one of the names on that list of 12, I think he'd be in an excellent position.
One of the crazy things that's floating around out there is the president could temporarily appoint somebody during the recess between the holidays and the new presidency. What would that do if he actually took advantage of that?
Well, the danger exists that you've got 50 days left of this presidency, and there are a lot of strange things that could happen. One of them, for example, let me just develop a scenario with you, is that the president goes to the Security Council and announces that there is a Palestinian state. I mean, there is no state. It's almost an oxymoron. How can you be a state without a government, without a parliament, with a president who was elected for 4 years and has now been there 11 years? Hamas would likely take over. It would be a terrorist entity. So what purpose is served except the optics behind it? And here Obama would say, I've opened up the Palestinian question just as I've opened up Cuba. His base would be very happy about that. But I can assure you that from the standpoint of American security and Middle East stability, it's a very, very misguided decision. So I'm very much opposed to it. And I hope the president doesn't do it and he faces enough pressure within the White House to not engage in this kind of overture. But I've heard a lot of rumors that this is precisely what the president wants to do.
Is there a reason behind that?
Well, as I said, I think he sees it along with the other achievements, quote unquote, achievements of his administration, like the treaty with Iran and like the reaching out to Cuba. Now, I'm not sure that you and I might regard them as achievements, but this is, of course, what I regard as his successful failures. Successful in the sense that these are things he wanted to accomplish, even if they fail in the matter of international affairs.
Suggesting that he's more pro-Palestinian than he is democracy.
Well, I think that that would be correct. And I think that not only would that suggest that, but it would also suggest that the president really doesn't understand the character of the Middle East. At the moment, there isn't anyone out there campaigning, lobbying for a Palestinian state. There are much more important issues for the Middle East to address. If you were to talk to the Sunnis today, the Palestinian issue may be number 10 or 12 on their list of of important matters. Number one would be the tilt toward Iran and what this will mean for the future of the Middle East. This is what Saudi Arabia is concerned with. As the putative leader of the Sunnis, they're concerned about the role that Iran is playing and the tilt on the part of this government to Iran. That's the overriding concern. So when you say Palestinian state, people kind of shake their heads saying, what are you talking about? We're not worried about that now. And needless to say, no one is except Obama.
Interesting. All right, let me take a quick break. Dr. Herb London's with us today. You can go to londoncenter.org is his website. He's the president of the London Center for Policy Research, and he's the co-author of a must-read book called the Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. Check it out at the bookstores. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Welcome back, and what a delight and an honor to have back with us today Dr. Herb London. He's the president of the London Center for Policy Research, the co-author of a book entitled The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam, a must-read. And you can go to his website, londoncenter.org, and you also get to his website through our website at theDove.us. Dr. London, it's kind of interesting. Donald Trump is saying that he'll undo all of the executive orders. Now, doesn't it take an executive order to unwind an executive order?
Well, I mean, one of the dangers, of course, of all of these executive orders is creating the impression that there's an imperial presidency. I mean, I prefer to rely on the legislature to make the laws. It's not the role of the president to do that. The president can provide leadership, guidance, even suggestions to the Congress, but ultimately the Congress makes the laws of this country. You read Arnold has limits on his authority. Obama, I think, exceeded those limits. I am not in favor of the imperial presidency. So my own feeling is that you want to have some combination of activities in government, with the Supreme Court reviewing the laws, not making the laws, the Congress making the laws, and the president providing the leadership that is necessary for those laws. That is the way in which a government should run. Unfortunately, over the years, the Supreme Court has taken on the responsibility for making law, as we see in the Obergefell case. We see a president that believes he can, through executive order, make laws, and I don't think that either one of those organizations is conducting themselves according to our constitutional principles.
Well, what does he do to unwind what he wants to unwind? How does he get rid of the Obama mess? What procedure would you suggest?
I mean, these are bureaucratic decisions made in order to maintain certain kind of procedures. The procedures can simply be ignored. There are things, protocols that obviously exist that should not exist. There are conditions that exceed the law and that by and large should simply be ignored. There are ways of dealing with EPA and other organizations within government that they can simply be changed because they're not enforced. The president has the power to enforce the laws. He could say in some circumstances, these laws no longer apply. They just are going to be ignored. They have no particular application. You look at the entire Obamacare mess. This is a mess. The president has to undo it. But it's dying of its own weight. There are no participants any longer. So if you program without participants, obviously there's no need for it. You should have sunset provisions. It's the end of this program. If no one can participate, if you can't buy insurance, if there's no way of getting health insurance, then what good is the program? Are they all going to be in Medicaid? And if it's Medicaid, then keep Medicaid and eliminate Obamacare. I mean, a lot of these things will die of their own weight. A lot of them are patently ridiculous and absurd. And again, the president can simply ignore them.
Interesting. So, are we asking a Congress to do to Trump what they wouldn't do to Obama? I mean, this is crazy.
You got a Republican Congress. Look, and this Congress undoubtedly recognizes the fact that if they want to stay in power, they're going to have to play ball with this Republican president. I think there will be a level of cooperation. Clearly, there are differences. McConnell and Ryan will have differences with the president, but by and large, these are pettifogging matters. On the whole, philosophically, I think they will share the same view, so that they can move ahead. It is unusual to see a Republican Congress, a Republican president. And if the president makes the appointments that I think are necessary in the Supreme Court, you will even have a conservatively based court. So this is an opportunity to undo so much of the damage that has been done by the Clintonistas, by the Obamas, by people in the recent past who have ignored the laws of this country and have engaged in policies that make no sense at all.
Some have said, it's being suggested, he needs to govern as if he's going to be a one-term president, but more so he needs to govern while he has 2 years of the majority in the House and the Senate. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that he may be a one-term president because my suspicion is Donald Trump will not have the patience to run for a second term. I think the next president of the United States is Mike Pence. I even think that if you look at this government, Mike Pence will play a very significant role, almost a role like a prime minister, and Trump being the president, a president who is doing all the important meetings with foreign ministers and with heads of state. But the day-to-day, the quotidian operations of government will be pretty much in the hands of Mike Pence.
What do you think of Jill Stein going for the recount? And Hillary says, that's a good idea. I think I'll help you.
Well, I think it is absurd. It is dangerous. I think you're looking for a civil war in America. Let's just assume, for the sake of argument, and of course this is not going to happen, but you find that the Wisconsin vote, roughly a difference of 16,000, belongs in the Hillary camp. And now you go to Pennsylvania and try to see if there's a change there. And you look at Michigan as well. And let's assume, even after the concession that Hillary Clinton made, saying, I concede the presidency to Donald Trump. He won the presidential election. And now you try to undo that. It's unprecedented in American history, and you're looking for a civil war. My feeling is this is dangerous, it's absurd, and I think that in some respects it's unconstitutional. A concession has been made. You pass the baton to the next government. One of the values of the United States is we have the seamless transition from one government to another. Even in the controversial 2000 election, Gore did pass the baton ultimately, and we did have a seamless transition. Sure, there were people that were upset, but it didn't lead to civil war. This could lead to civil war. It is an outrageous development, in my judgment.
Very well said. Does President Obama pardon her for what she's under investigation for now? And can he pre-pardon her for something down the road?
Well, a pre-pardon is a little odd. How do you pre-pardon someone when we're not sure of the crime? I mean, my feeling is that there should be an investigation. Once you know the nature of the crime, you can decide to pardon or not pardon. But part of the difficulty now is that we're in a kind of ambiguous situation. My feeling is that the president-elect also made a mistake in saying that he doesn't want to pursue the matter. Well, the matter is pursued because the laws of this land apply to everyone, including the Clintons. They don't have a separate set of laws for themselves. The Constitution wasn't written so that Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are separate from the rest of America. They apply, the laws of this land apply to them just as they apply to everyone else. If they've broken the laws, they should face a penalty. So my feeling is it's a little premature for the president-elect to say anything, and a little premature to engage in a pre-pardon for a crime that hasn't been established.
Okay, but she is under investigation now, so that possibly could be pardoned, but anything past that point in the future obviously couldn't be considered.
That is correct. Again, it's very, very difficult to say what foreign governments will do. There are foreign governments that may decide they want to pursue the matter, since obviously there appeared to be a pay-to-play arrangement in the State Department. So if Morocco was giving $16 million, they wanted something for those $16 million that were given to the Clinton Foundation. And they simply didn't give it because Hillary Clinton is such an attractive woman, or Hillary Clinton has been so nice to them in telephone conversations. There is a quid pro quo. And once you know what that quid pro quo is, you're in a better position to make judgments about how Hillary Clinton should be treated. And of course, Morocco is not the only example. Frank Justra, for example, who ends up with 20% of the uranium produced in the United States, which he sells to Russia. I mean, this is like selling the rope, like Lenin selling the rope to the United States that will be used to hang us. You ask yourself the obvious question: why is Frank Justra giving so much money to the Clinton Foundation? What did he get out of the deal? He's an enormously wealthy Canadian, and now there are some questions about his rather unseemly behavior and the kind of corruption that existed in the State Department. So there are lots of questions that emerge from the point of view of foreign governments that are now engaged in relationships with the United States.
Well, we got about a minute left. Does Comey go, under your opinion?
I think Comey goes. I think that Comey's reputation has been hurt on both sides of the aisle. I don't know whether Comey has conducted himself properly or improperly, but the one thing that I can tell you is that when an aircraft in Phoenix lands next to the Attorney General, and that this is purely coincidental, and that there's a conversation that takes place over golf and grandchildren, and Comey knows nothing about it, and Hillary Clinton is investigated but not under oath, you've got to wonder. This is a very, very strange set of circumstances.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Lennon. You're a delight, my friend. Blessings on you. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, you can go to londoncenter.org is his website. Check out his book, The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. Look forward to many more visits, my friend. Take care, and God bless, and let's see where this goes.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
There he is, Dr. Lennon. And again, you can go to londoncenter.org is the website, and check out the book, The Encyclopedia of Militant Islam. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.